but it's not going to be an RB1 situation in Seattle next year. Ken Walker's not going to be the RB1.
But please do not tell me he is on the same standard as Ken Walker.
We're probably not going to be in unison on Zach Charbonnet because Pez has already alluded to something maybe that he might throw into the...
Pez needs to go first on this one, I think.
Throw the spanner in the works. Well, just hang on a minute, because who championed Zach Charbonnet on this podcast?
Yes.
Loves him. So I'll just let you know that Zach Charbonnet. I'm sorry that you'll probably hear this, Pez, but it's not going to be an RB1 situation in Seattle next year. Ken Walker's not going to be the RB1. Zach Charbonnet is not going to be the RB1. There's going to be no RB1. They're going to split the carries. You can shake your head all you want, but I'm telling you now, I will call it now. Zach Charbonnet is an absolute... You don't realise how good of a player this is. I'm just telling you.
So he's just as good as Ken Walker?
He is just as good as Ken Walker.
Oh, fuck off. Add that to your list, Josh.
Okay.
Fuck off.
Well, I'm going to clip that, right? You will see. Zach Charbonnet is a monster. 1,358 yards on 194 carries last year, 14 touchdowns for UCLA, as well as 37 receptions for 320 yards as a receiver and 97 quarterback rating when targeted as a receiver. The guy can do everything. I promise you, he is as good at Kenneth Walker as what he does. In terms of what he brings, he's not as good as Kenneth Walker as an elusive back, but in terms of what he brings... No. Because he's not an elusive back. Even though he makes people miss, he's a power back. And in terms of how good he is at being at doing that job, in terms of how good Ken Walker is at being an elusive back, Zach Charbonnet is excellent. He's absolutely excellent. I promise you, Pez. Just go with
he compliments, and I'm not knocking him as a talent. I like him as a running back, and it's what I've been championing for, a 1-2. This stinks of Pete Carroll. When you look at what he's picking up, look at what he's done in, like, just to bring it back up, the free agency with the D-line is what he did. I said at the start of free agency, if he attacks free agency straight away, he clearly believes he's got a team here where he's not going to waste a roll of dice on. I genuinely believe, for as batshit crazy that old man is, I genuinely think he actually he's got that feeling. I think I've got something close to 2012, 2013 again, because he attacked free agency as aggressively as he did. I said it in the chat, said it in the Discord. If he goes off in free agency, and he did, and what he did back at that time was he had a heavy rotation on the D-line. That's all I'm seeing. Just to bring that in, the Zach Charbonnet pick for me is your Robert Turbin to your thing. As in that regard, I love the pick. But please do not tell me he is on the same standard as Ken Walker. You need to go, after you've had your shower, before your mum shouts at you when we finish recording, go and watch Ken Walker highlights from college and just refresh your mind
watched him all,
of how good he is.
Ken Walker is.
Because you clearly don't. Because Zach Charbonnet is a good running back. Ken Walker is a total bar ahead of him. He complements Ken Walker really well. They are not on the same level. They just aren't.
Fight.
Okay. No, there's no need to
They're
fight.
just not. Clip it. Do what you want. He's just not.
We don't need to fight. Pez would win in terms of in 12 rounds. I understand that. I'm going to win the psychological battle. I'm going to sit here and just let Zach Charbonnet prove Pez wrong this season. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to say no more. I'm going to say no more. Josh, how are you?
I think the Robert Turbin comparison was a bit unfair because I think Charbonnet is going to see more of the field than Turbo did. There's not a slight on Turbo. We've had him on as a guest. He's a good lad. But it was well documented how much time Beast Mode spent on the field and not Turbo. I'm with Pez. I think Walker is the better back. But I'm also with you, Jim. I'm pointing on my screen. It's going to be completely different when this video comes out. I'm also with you, Jim, in the fact that I think it's going to be a running back by committee, 1A, 1B. because you cannot run a player like Ken Walker into the ground, because if you give him the majority, now the league's seen him as well, if you give him the majority of carries, the league's going to know exactly what to expect, or they're going to be gunning for him. Whereas Charbonnet is an unknown commodity. So you try your hand with Walker, then you try your hand with Charbonnet, who Charbonnet gives you that pass catching ability out of the backfield as well. Then we've got another running back who we picked up later on, we'll discuss. And then, you go back to Walker and you just keep going at those holes with the different weapons you've got to see which works best. I think Walker's more elusive than Charbonnet, but I think Charbonnet has got the sheer mass just to bully people. And you've seen it in some of his highlights where he will go in between a guard and a center, straight through the middle, and he will make contact before he runs for another 10 to 15 yards, which is what we need.
That's the comparison for Turbo.
I was going to say, that's what you're after?
That's the comparison, not the play time. So everything you said, I totally agree with.
Yeah.
But who's your 1A and who's your 1B?
That's the thing with 1A, 1B. They're both on par because they both offer a totally different thing. So you could play against
A is more than B, in my opinion.
Well, that's the reason you say 1A, 1B, because they're both a par, but it's a selection between the two. But you could play against, say, a team who have got fantastic edges who can contain an outside run. That right there is Walker out the game. So what do? You bring on Charbonnet for that game and you let him run through or between the centres and the guards and the tackles, and you just let him keep plugging those holes in the middle. And at some point, those guards are going to be hanging out of their hoop where he's going to break one off. Once he's done that and he's worn them down, you can try bringing Ken back on as well with his speed to shift through one of those gaps and make some more yards. I think it's a great tactic, and I think it's what we needed. Just put a TikTok up about it.
Good lad.
I don't think Charbonnet is on the same standard, though.
This is why I don't pick favourite players or get players' jerseys.
It's not about favourites. No, this is not about favourites.
What if we drafted Bijan Robinson? Would you say the same?
No, not a chance. Completely different.
So
Mitch, at this current moment in time, completely different. If it was Bijan Robinson, we're talking completely different game here.
Mitch, what are your thoughts?
I'm really happy with the pick. I think I know we've there's so many sort of habits, and it's a sheep league where people follow other teams with the trends and things. And let's not forget that last season was the first season where we were up to 17 games. And 17 games seems like not a huge extension. It was 15 before, right? So 2 games doesn't seem like very much, but that's 50. If you've got Ken Walker and he's your main back, that's another 50 carries in a year, right? That's an awful lot more than he had in college, and it's an awful lot more than the existing experienced veteran running backs that were heavily used were having to do. Now, if you think that Ken Walker ended up banged up on 2 occasions during the season, right? He had one that was a bit more. He had an ankle thing, didn't he? That became a bit of a niggler. And he had another thing that's both ankle. I think it might have been both ankle issues, right? And I think a lot of that is due to us relying on him so heavily, so quickly, and for so long. And you've got to remember that if we're aiming to go further than one and done in the playoffs, we're going to want to make sure he's fresh, injury-free going into that, because he's a key player for us now. We are literally at this point looking at it and saying we can build around Ken Walker. So I see Charbonnet as a way of building around Ken Walker. He gives different things. He can carry the load a little bit. I think as good as Ken Walker was in the fourth quarter of games last year, he was only good for us in the last quarter of games because we were chasing games. They were close games. He was ripping off big runs, match-winning touchdowns late in games. If we get to a stage next year where we're that much better and we're defending small leads late in games, Charbonnet's getting the ball. I want those gut-punching 3 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards reception from him. I want to see us grinding the clock. I don't want to see Ken Walker either getting blown up at the line
or take him onto the house.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to see 30 or nothing. I want to see 4, 4, 4. Small completion to Jackson Smith and Jigba, another 4. That's what's going to see us get through games when we're in winning positions going into the last quarter. So back to Josh's point, plan A, plan B from 1A and 1B. different situations, horses for courses. There'll be games where Charbonnet brings a skill set that gets us through games. There'll be games when Ken Walker wins a game on his own. So we've got a seriously diverse set of running backs. Back to my point about 17 games a season and it being a sheep league, I would not be surprised if teams start budgeting slightly more of the salary cap to having 2 fit, equal quality running backs to make sure 17 games plus 4 to 5 postseason games is doable with the 2 backs that they've got without sacrificing quality.
Yeah,
You are right in what you're saying though, because if you look at the 2 people who love running the ball the most in the league, Arthur Smith and Pete Carroll, he's got Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson, and Bijan Robinson really wasn't the right pick for the Falcons at that spot. But for Arthur Smith, who believes in Pete Carroll ways of playing football, it was the right pick. Like the Charbonnet pick wasn't the right pick for us at that spot. It wasn't. It wasn't with all the running backs left on the board. But it makes sense because it was a Pete Carroll run draft.
Yeah. Any other team, I think it makes 0 sense. But I do think people will go that way more with 17 games in a season if you're looking to be a playoff team.
I'm just going to poke the bear here because Mr. Eyeroll in the corner and not speaking is... So you're saying I'm digging out Charbonnet. I'm just standing on my post and saying that Ken Walker's a totally thing. I'm not disrespecting Charbonnet. Everything Josh has said, I completely agree with. I am not saying any of that's wrong. I just don't. I think Ken, he complements Ken more. He's going to help make Ken better. I don't think it's going to be a case of it's 1A, 1B, they're level, and Charbonnet could then be the starter. I think Ken's going to be the starter, and Charbonnet's going to, like, that's what I mean by the turbo thing, but not like basically what you just said. So like turbo, but playing more.
It's
with 17
Mitch
games.
said was horses for courses, whatever lights your candle type thing, and it will be a matter of whatever teams they play and what their defense is. So if it depends what people's strengths are, and this is where we've now got a strength at running back. As Mitch has said, it's a long season now. You need to keep your running backs as fresh as possible. So with the 4 we've got, it gives us a bit of flexibility to try different things. I agree. I think Ken will probably start games. And then when we go, actually, we might need to change it up. That's when Charbonnet is going to come in, and Charbonnet is going to make a massive impact. And that's where the 1A, 1B thing comes in for me. Either way, before we go down a massive rabbit hole on Charbonnet, have we given grades?
I just want to say one thing about it is, again, the reason why I say it's a Marshawn, like it's a Pete draft and it's a Marshawn turbo thing, and Pete has his players, and these are all Pete's. This is how Pete likes to play football, in my opinion, and these are his selections, because it suits what he likes doing. It's like Sherm said, people best not be surprised if you go back to more Pete Carroll football. Like, you better be prepared for Pete Carroll defense, Pete Carroll offense. And that's what I mean by that, is like his picks are like feels like he's got something. And like we said, he's arrogant in his opinion of himself. And if he feels like he's got that dust from 2012, 2013, he's taking us back to the Stone Ages and playing that way again. And that's what I see with the Charbonnet pick. That's what I was just getting at, is you got to remember, Marshawn Lynch wasn't this world-killing guy. Like, there was multiple games in his career where he did nothing for massive chunks of games. And like Christian Michael?
Mm-hmm.
Christian Michael and Robert Turbin had to come in and soften the defense, and then he got going in the 3rd and 4th quarter. That happened a hell of a lot. That's why I'm bullish on the fact that Ken is going to be, in their eyes, Ken is like your quote-unquote Marshawn Lynch, and Charbonnet is the quote-unquote Turbo 2. But obviously, like Josh and Mitch said, more games, more playing time, for injury.
Yeah. I
Just to make it clear, I'm not dissing him as a player.
No, I take your point, Pez. You make a good point. I understand where you're coming from. That's why I'm giving Zach Charbonnet an A+. I'm only joking. He's getting an A. He's not getting an A+. You don't. All I'm going to say is you don't realise how good this guy is. You don't realise how good and how important this guy is going to be to our team this year. You will see it for yourself. That's all I'm going to say. A for Zach Charbonnet. Pez, what are you giving him?
I don't know, really. I'm undecided because as a player, the pick we got him is really good. But at the moment in that draft with the player still on the board, are we drafting the player himself or the pick?
Player.
I'll say A then, definitely, because of where we got him.
And what would you have given it the pick?
If it was a pick, I would have said more like a B or something, because I feel like there's other players in other areas.
That's better than what I thought it was going to be.
Also, a thing what riled me up about the pick, it's not about the player. The player's really good, and I know how good he is. Like you're saying, like I'm disrespecting Kim. I know how good he is.
I get you, mate. Josh, what are you giving it?
I'm giving it a Charbonnet.
A Charbonnet. I like it. Good lad. You can stick around.
I just think it's I think we're all, even though we're arguing different points, we're all circling around to the same point. I think the fact that we've drafted another running back this high means that the workload is going to be split, whether it be evenly or slightly tilted in Ken's favour, doesn't matter. It gives us another weapon for people to have to look out for us to be able to, for Shane Waldron to be able to adjust his game plan accordingly to what the defence is showing. I think it's a fantastic pick. He was rated around about, or graded around about this area for every single mock we've ever done. And yeah, I was surprised we took him because I thought we might have taken someone else, but I'm genuinely really happy with this because I don't want to see Ken Walker get run into the ground in his second year in the league, and then we have to rely on pod favourite DJ Dallas to carry the load.
Yeah, I totally agree. Mitch?
It would have been a strong B or a low A, so an A- or a B+ for me. But because of the pick later on with McIntosh dropping to us, I think we need Charbonnet less as a third down back. So I think some of the job that Charbonnet would have been drafted for is now going to be shared with McIntosh, who's also a great receiver out the back. So it would be an A. It's dropped to a B for me simply because a big part of the snaps he was going to take are now going to be shared with McIntosh, I think. So we couldn't have predicted McIntosh being there. But I think that degraded the need for him. So when we took him originally, it was an A down to a B because of McIntosh. That's my take.